Idomeneo, Redecreta Oscia Ilia e Idomanti is an Italian-language opera seria by Wolfgang Amadeus Mozart. The libretto was adapted by Giambattista Vesco from a French text by Antoine Dancay, which had been set to music by Andra copyright Cambra as Idoma copyright Na copyright E in 1712. Mozart and Vesco were commissioned in 1780 by Karl Theodor, Elector of Bavaria for a court carnival. He probably chose the subject, though it might have been Mozart. The work premiered on January 29, 1781 at the Residence Theatre in Munich, Germany. Composition. The libretto clearly draws inspiration from Metastasio in its overall layout, the type of character development, and the highly poetic language used in the various numbers and the secco and strumentato recitatives. The style of the choruses, marches, and ballets is very French, and the shipwreck scene towards the end of Act I is almost identical to the structure and dramatic working out of a similar scene in Glücksefiger copyright Nientoride. The sacrifice and oracle scenes are similar to Glücksefiger copyright Lied and Alcest. Kurt Kramer has suggested that Vesco was familiar with Kurzebiji and therefore the work of Gluck, especially the latter's Alcest. Much of what we see in Vesco's most dramatic passages is the latest French style, mediated by Kurzebiji. It is thanks to Mozart, though, that this mixture of French styles moves away from Gluck and France and returns to its more Italian roots. The singers were all trained in the classical Italian style, after all, and the recitatives are all classically Italian. Performance history. It was first performed at the Cuvelier Copyright S Theatre of the Munich residence on January 29, 1781, under the musical direction of its 25-year-old composer. The opera apparently owed much of its success at its first performance to the set designs. A notice in the Munich press did not mention Mozart by name but said, "The author, composer and translator are all natives of Salzburg." The decors, among which the view of the port and Neptune's temple were outstanding, were masterpieces by our renowned theatre designer, court councillor Lorenzo Quilio, and everyone admired them tremendously. Idomeneo was Mozart's first mature opera. With it he demonstrated a mastery of orchestral color, accompanied recitatives, and melodic line. Mozart fought with the librettist, the court chaplain Vesco, making large cuts and changes, even down to specific words and vowels disliked by the singers. Idomeneo was performed 3 times in Munich. Later in 1781 Mozart considered revisions that would have brought the work closer into line with Gluck's style. This would have meant a bass Idomeneo and a tenor Idomanti. A concert performance was given in 1786 at the Palais Auersperg in Vienna. For this, Mozart wrote some new music, made some cuts, and changed Idomanti from a castrato to a tenor. The British premiere was given by the amateur Glasgow Grand Opera Society in 1934. The first performance in the United States was produced by Boris Goldovsky at the Berkshire Music Festival at Tanglewood during the summer of 1947. Today Idomeneo is part of the standard operatic repertoire. There are several recordings of it, and it is regularly performed. In 2006 there was a controversy over the cancelling of a 2003 production directed by Hans Neuenfels at the Deutsche Oper Berlin. Richard Strauss version The approach of the 150th anniversary of Idomeneo's premiere placed some major European opera houses in a quandary. Commemorative performances of so magnificent and historically important a score seemed obligatory, but, at the same time, how dared they mount an opera that 1930/31 audiences were bound to reject as hopelessly unstageworthy? The solution hit on in Munich and Vienna was to have Idomeneo adapted for modern tastes, but to show due reverence to Mozart's genius by entrusting the adaptations to famous 20th-century opera composers with impeccable credentials as Mozartians. Thus Munich commissioned an Idomeneo revision from Emanuel Ferrari, performed in 1931, and the same year the Vienna State Opera presented a distinctively interventionist version of the score by Richard Strauss. For his adaptation of Idomeneo, Strauss employed a German libretto by Lothar Wallerstein that was partially a translation of the original Italian libretto, but with some changes to reflect the rearranging of the music. Strauss replaced about one-third of Mozart's score with some of his own music. and rearranged much of the music left behind. For example, Ilia's opening aria Padre, Germani, Addio, is mostly intact with a few changes to the long introductory recitative, but when Idomeneo enters, he sings Mozart's Non temo amato bene, K 490, instead of Non ho colpa. A few major changes to the plot were made as well, such as changing Princess Elettra to Priestess Ismen. Critics have noted that Strauss's editions contain an interesting blend of the classical style of composition and Strauss's own characteristic sound. In 1984, New York's Mostly Mozart Festival presented Strauss's version with Jerry Hadley in the title role, Dolores Ziegler as Idomeneo, and Alessandra Mark as Ismen. Roles. Instrumentation. The instrumentation is, woodwinds 2 flutes, piccolo, 2 oboes, 2 clarinets, 2 bassoons. B clarinets are used in number 15 and number 19. Brass, 4 horns in B, in G, 2 trumpets in D, 3 trombones, percussion, timpani in D and in A, basso continuo and recitatives of harpsichord and violoncello, strings. Synopsis. Overture equals, the overture, in D major and common time, is in a modified sonata form in which the development is but a very short transition section connecting the exposition with the recapitulation. Other conventional hallmarks of the sonata form are apparent. The exposition modulates from the tonic to the dominant, while the recapitulation is centered on the tonic. The overture concludes with a coda ending in D major chords. These chords, soft and tentative, turn out not to be a resolution of the overture in the tonic but chords in the dominant of G minor, which is the home key of the scene that immediately follows. Act 1 Island of Crete, shortly after the Trojan War. Ilia, daughter of the defeated Trojan king Priam, was taken to Crete after the war. She loves Prince Idomeneo, son of Idomeneo, but she hesitates to acknowledge her love. Idomeneo frees the Trojan prisoners in a gesture of goodwill. He tells Ilia, who is rejecting his love, that it is not his fault that their fathers were enemies. Trojans and Cretans together welcome the return of peace, but Electra, daughter of the Greek king Agamemnon, is jealous of Ilia and does not approve of Idomeneo's clemency toward the enemy prisoners. Arбас, the king's confidant, brings news that Idomeneo has been lost at sea while returning to Crete from Troy. Electra, fearing that Ilia, a Trojan, soon will be queen of Crete, feels the furies of Hades tormenting her. Idomeneo is saved by Neptune and is washed up on a Cretan beach. There he recalls the vow he made to Neptune, to sacrifice, if he should arrive safely on land, the first living creature he should meet. Idomeneo approaches him, but because the two have not seen each other for a long time, recognition is difficult. When Idomeneo finally realizes the youth that he must sacrifice for the sake of his vow as his own child, he orders Idomeneo never to seek him out again. Grief-stricken by his father's rejection, Idomeneo runs off. Cretan troops disembarking from Idomeneo's ship are met by their wives, and all praise Neptune. Act 2 At the king's palace, Idomeneo seeks counsel from Arбас, who says another victim could be sacrificed if Idomeneo was sent into exile. Idomeneo orders his son to escort Electra to her home, Argos. Idomeneo's kind words to Ilia move her to declare that since she has lost everything, he will be her father and Crete her country. As she leaves, Idomeneo realizes that sending Idomeneo into exile has cost Ilia her happiness as well as his own. Electra welcomes the idea of going to Argos with Idomeneo. At the port of Sidon, Idomeneo bids his son farewell and urges him to learn the art of ruling while he is away. Before the ship can sail, however, a storm breaks out, and a sea serpent appears. Recognizing it as a messenger from Neptune, the king offers himself as atonement for having violated his vow to the god. Act 3 In the royal garden, Ilia asks the breezes to carry her love to Idomeneo, who appears, explaining that he must go to fight the serpent. When he says he would rather die than suffer the torments of his rejected love, Ilia confesses her love. They are surprised by Electra and Idomeneo. When Idomeneo asks his father why he sends him away, Idomeneo can only reply that the youth must leave. Ilya asks for consolation from Electra, who is preoccupied with revenge. Arbace comes with news that the people, led by the High Priest of Neptune, are clamoring for Idomeneo. The High Priest tells the king of the destruction caused by Neptune's monster, urging Idomeneo to reveal the name of the person whose sacrifice is demanded by the god. When the king confesses that his own son is the victim, the populace is horrified. Outside the temple, the king and high priest join Neptune's priests in prayer that the god may be appeased. Arbace brings news that Idomeneo has killed the monster. As Idomeneo fears new reprisals from Neptune, Idomeneo enters in sacrificial robes, saying he understands his father's torment and is ready to die. After an agonizing farewell, Idomeneo is about to sacrifice his son when Ilya intervenes, offering her own life instead. The voice of Neptune is heard. Idomeneo must yield the throne to Ilya and Idomeneo. Everyone is relieved except Electra, who longs for her own death. Idomeneo presents Idomeneo and his bride as the new rulers. The people call upon the god of love and marriage to bless the royal pair and bring peace. Noted arias, Act 1, Padre, Germani, Addio, Ilya, Non ho colpa, Idomontes, Tut nel cento fuori del cupo aveno, Electra, Vedrami intorno, Idomeneo, Il Padre adorato, Idomontes, Act 2, Se il tuo duel, Arbaces, Se il Padre perdi, Ilya, Fuor del mar, Idomeneo, Idol mio, Electra, Act 3, Zeffiretti losing Eri, Ilya, Se coloni fati scritto, Arbaces, no, la morte io non pavento no, I'm not afraid of dying, Idomontes, d'arrest, Darges ho and seno e tormenti, Electra, torna la pace, Idomeneo. Recordings. Audio video James Levine. Deutsche Grammophon. Starring, Luciano Pavarotti, Frederica von Stade, Elena Katrubi unregistered trademark, Hildegard Behrens and John Alexander. This was the Metropolitan Opera's first production of the work. Bernard Haitink. NVC Arts. Staged by Trevor Nunn. Starring, Philip Langridge, Jerry Hadley, Yvonne Kenny, Carol Vanis. Filmed in Glyndebourne, studio condition. Marco Guidarini. Dynamic. Staged by Pierluigi Pizzai. Starring, Kurt Street. Sonia Ganassi. Angelis Blancas Gulin. Yano Tamar. Jar Paragraph G. Schneider. Dario Magnabosco. Dejan Vachkov. Antonietta Bellon. Lucia Guitar. Carmine Duranti, Carmine Minella. Orchestra and chorus of Naples' Teatro di San Carlo. Daniel Harding. RAI Trade. Camilla Tilling, Emma Bell, Monica Basley, Steve Davishlim, Francesco Melli. Staged by Luke Bondi. Live from La Scala. Sir Roger Norrington. Decca. Part of the M22 project from the Salzburg Festival. Staged by Ursula and Karl and Herriman at House for Mozart. Starring, Ramacu Den Vargas, Magdalena Co 3/4 Ina, Anja Hartiros, Terina Sayurina, Jeffrey Francis. Kent Nagano. Medici Arts. Staged by Dieter Dorn. Starring, John Mark Ainsley, Pavel Brislik, Juliane Bantz, Annette Dash, Rainer Trost, Guy Demey, Stephen Humes. Live from the Bavarian State Opera. Nikolaus Harnenort. Stille Art Festival Edition. Staged by Nikolaus and Philip Harnenort. Starring, Salome Ipgu. Julia Coletta. Marie-Claude Chapuis. Eva Marie. Arnold Schoenberg Choir. Concentus Musica Sween. Includes all original ballet scenes. See also, List of operas by Mozart, 2006 Idomeneo controversy. References. External links. Idomeneo, score and critical report in the name Mozart Oscabi, Idomeneo, scores at the International Music Score Library Project, synopsis, Metropolitan Opera, San Diego Opera Talk. With Nick Revels, Mozart's Idomeneo, libretto.